asking to have a cesarean section.
Some chalk up this trend to celebrities asking for C-sections. Dr. Brian Baer, an OBGYN from Aurora Advanced Healthcare, joining us live this afternoon to talk about the trend in requesting C-sections. What have you seen?
We've seen an uptick in people who are coming in and requesting it, and certainly we always have a discussion as to the reasons why, and they vary very much so. But if someone comes in and has a good discussion and a good reason for doing it, we will. But the C-section rate is now up to 33%. It's quite high, and there's a lot of pushback on some of the things that we're doing.
So it's safe for mom and baby to have a C-section, even if they don't need it?
Well, it's a surgical procedure, so there's an increased risk of blood loss and infection, and more importantly, the baby can aspirate fluid as it delivers because it doesn't get squeezed by going through the birth canal.
Mm-hmm. What's the recovery time like for somebody who goes through with a C-section?
Well, recovery time is usually anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. Of course, moms are forced to get up and be active, and so they tend to recover from the surgery a little bit faster than a hysterectomy, but it's still a longer recovery than a vaginal delivery.
You said so if somebody gives you a good reason that you would agree to do this. What would a good reason be?
Well, someone would come in and say, my mother had a lot of problems with urinary incontinence and had a lot of surgeries as she grew older. I can't even bear the thought of going through what she went through. And that comes from, pushing out a 10-pound baby. But the thing is it's up to us to counsel people. And some of the things that we can do to reduce the C-section rate is to give people a little longer to push when they're in labor, be more patient when they're in labor, and wait for their labor to progress, because we found now that the active phase of labor actually can take up until you're 6 centimeters dilated. And then probably a really important thing to do is to avoid gaining a lot of weight, because the more weight you gain, the bigger the baby you have, and the bigger the baby, the harder it is to push out. So there's a number of things that we can do actually to help lower the C-section rate.
Are there cases where you'll say no to a C-section? Let's say somebody says, I want to have a baby under a certain astrological sign, and, this week we're going to change over. I want a C-section before this date. Is that a conversation you'd be willing to have, or is that a no-go?
Well, I'm always willing to have the conversation, but I think that's kind of pushing it a little.
Okay.
So, but the best thing that we can do to help lower the C-section rate at this point is to not have people have C-sections with their first babies, and then they don't need to think about it from there on in.
All right, Dr. Brian Baer, thank you.
You're welcome. Got a question for our expert? Send an email to asktheexpert@today'stmj4.com. You may also leave a voicemail. The number 967-5253.